Namaste everybody. Welcome to the 8th video in the overall series An Introduction to Sanatana Dharma. This is the 7th video in the sub-series Books and Prophets of Hinduism. Till date, we have discussed certain topics on the various books that are associated with Hinduism. In this particular video, we will talk about the prophets. Let's get started. So, as you may have already guessed, Hinduism does not have concept of a prophet. The closest that Hinduism has to the concept of prophethood is possibly guru, in fact, or to an extent a rishi. For me, a prophet is somebody who connects mankind with the inner divinity. Please note that in Hinduism says that God is not separate from creation. God does not sit somewhere and watch over everything. Not necessarily like that. God is present everywhere. Here, in me, you, all animals, rocks, stones, everything, anything is God. There is nothing but God, is what Hinduism says. Hinduism does not only say there is one God, it does, by the way. It also says there is nothing but God. So, a prophet or a guru is somebody who puts mankind in touch with inner divinity. Now, we have discussed this earlier. Rishihi Darshanat. A rishi is an enlightened being who, in a certain state of super consciousness called samadhi, is able to receive certain divine knowledge from God and pass that on to humankind. This is something that we had discussed earlier also. So, a rishi, basically, Rishihi Darshanat, he who is able to attain this state of super consciousness and visualize these mantras is said to be a rishi. Now, this concept of Saptarshi is something that more or less I think everybody would have heard somewhere or the other. Remember that Manvantara, remember that shloka about the 5 qualities of the Purana? Sargascha, Pratisargascha, Vamsho, Manvantarani cha, Vamshanujaritam chaiva, Puranam, Panchalakshanam. So Manvantara is a Hindu concept of time, which we will discuss later. So Saptarshis, Saptarshi basically means a set of 7 rishis meant for a particular Manvantara. Now, whether it is the Saptarshis or whether it is a normal rishi or in fact a rishika, Hinduism does not have only male rishis. There's also a phrase called rishika, which refers to women. I'm using rishi in a generic term. However, there is the concept of rishi and rishika. So what a rishi, whether Saptarshi or in general, does is basically penance or tapasya for loka kalyana, the welfare of the world. They do not think about themselves. They are beyond what are small things to them, like thinking of themselves. So whatever they do, the tapasya, the actions are all geared towards loka kalyana. These basically can be in tune with whatever is, let's say, passed down figuratively by the man or woman above, just figuratively talking. So, but the basic idea is the welfare of the world, the creation, the entire universe, so to say. On top of that, they also invoke Parabrahma to incarnate. Whenever adharma takes an upper hand, whenever dharma is on decline, they invoke Parabrahma to incarnate so that that balance is brought out, or dharma gains an upper hand again. Also, rishis are the ones who are said to oversee the affairs of the world and on an overall basis. There are these conspiracy theories, right? Illuminati, some family, some banking family. These people are supposed to run the world. God only knows about that. But the universe, the creation, the world are all run by the rishis. This is something that even is given in this book called Kundalini by Robert Svoboda. I've mentioned that in the references. He also says this in his book that it is these rishis who are behind the affairs of the world, in fact, so to say, right? So they constitute the hidden hand behind whatever is happening in this world. Going ahead, there are different kinds of rishis or different categories, let's say, depending on their level of spiritual power, spiritual enlightenment, not spiritual enlightenment, their uh, level of spiritual attainment, the amount of spiritual power they have. Rishi, Devarshi, Rajarshi. Oh, in fact, I forgot to put in Devarshi, Narada as a Devarshi. Rishi, Devarshi, Rajarshi, Maharshi, uh, Brahmarshi. There are various names. So, in fact, Rama calls himself a Rajarshi in the Ramayana. Uh, uh, he considers himself to be a Rajarshi, Raja. He was a Raja, obviously a king. He was a Kshatriya. At the same time, he also considered himself a Rishi from a temperament perspective. That way, there are various categories, kinds of rishis we can talk about. Now, let us talk about rishis in the Itihasas. I think, given the content that I have in mind, I will only be able to cover the Ramayana. Veda Vyasa and Mahabharata, I will try to cover in the next video. In this particular video, I will try to talk about the rishis that are present in the Ramayana. The first shloka of the Ramayana is Tapaswadhyaya Niratam Tapasvi Vagvidambaram Naradam Paripapracha Valmiki Munipungavam. This is the first shloka of the Ramayana, of the Valmiki Ramayana. The Ramayana came about because two rishis talked to each other. The sage Valmiki spoke to the Devarshi Narada and he put certain questions to him, which we had discussed a little while back. The entire Ramayana came about because of this particular discussion. So the rishis were behind the creation of the Ramayana itself. They were the ones who asked Parabrahma to incarnate, Parabrahma Narayana to incarnate as Rama. On top of that, Ramayanam, Rama's journey was guided throughout by various rishis. Let's start with Vasishtha. Vasishtha was the Purohita. He was the priest. He was the teacher of the Ikshvaku, the Surya Vamsha, of which Rama was part. He was his first teacher. The Yoga Vasishtham was a discussion between the sage Vasishtha, he was a Brahmarshi by the way, and Sri Rama. Then Vishwamitra. We touched upon Vishwamitra a little while back. He is the mantra drashta of the Gayatri mantra as we know it. He was the one who put Rama on the path of Asura Samhara. At a point of time, he had an intense personal rivalry with Vasishtha. Vishwamitra also is a Brahmarshi. Vishwamitra is a very important part of the Ramayana that way. In fact, when Vishwamitra took Rama from Dasharatha for the protection of his yajna, of his sacrifice, he tells him one thing, that Dasharatha, you are not aware of who Rama is. The rishis know who Rama is. So that way, in the Ramayana, there are a lot of rishis who in fact were waiting for Rama to take birth. And the rishis were aware of the divine essence or the divine nature of Rama. Coming to Parashurama, Parashurama, as everyone knows, is an incarnation of Narayana. In Hinduism, there is this concept that 16 parts make a whole. Okay, so imagine that the essence of Narayana is made up of 16 parts. Parashurama was born with 2 and Sri Rama was born with 14. Rama encountered Parashurama after his wedding. Parashurama was extremely angry that Rama had broken Shiva's bow. So he challenged Rama to hold the, hold the arrow and bow of Vishnu Chapa. Rama won. Now in this encounter, apparently 2 parts of Narayana's essence passed over from Parashurama to Rama. Rama that way is considered to be a Paripurna Avatara, where the entire essence of Narayana was present on the earth. Parashurama, his role was not limited to the Ramayana. In fact, his role is not limited to the Ramayana. Latest thing possibly would be that he's supposed to be the sculptor of the Moola Virat in the Ajappa temple in Shabarimala. I think Ajappa's father was a king named Rajashekhara. So Parashurama is the one who's said to have created that Moola Virat, or the idol in the Sanctum Sanctorum, the Murti in the Sanctum Sanctorum. He's the one who's said to have created Kerala. He appears in the Mahabharata as the teacher of Bhishma. Karna also learned astras from him for some time, but there was a certain deception that Karna undertook, because of which Parashurama cursed Karna. In the Shaktaya tradition, Parashurama appears as a Devi Upasaka. That way, Parashurama is a rishi who comes across, who we come across in various places. We see the Bharadwaja in at least the name Bharadwaja in the Ramayana in at least 2 contexts. At the beginning of the Ramayana, before Rama was born, the name Bharadwaja comes. We come across the name Bharadwaja as a disciple of the sage Valmiki. In fact, he was present with Valmiki when he saw the hunter shoot the arrow at the male bird that we discussed in the earlier video. Later on in the Ramayana, Sri Rama, Sita, Lakshmana visit Bharadwaja's ashrama during their exile. Bharata also, while searching for Rama, comes to Bharadwaja's ashrama. I believe Sri Rama, Sita, Lakshmana visit Bharadwaja on the way back also after Ravana Samhara. Atri, Anasuya were a couple, extremely powerful, extremely spiritual, of a very, maybe the ultimate level of attainment. In fact, Atri and Anasuya were already the parents of Narayana earlier. Dattatreya is a name that a lot of you might have heard. So Dattatreya was born to Atri and Anasuya. In fact, in the Ramayana, Atri hints that this woman is like a mother to you, to Sri Rama. Obviously, Dattatreya, Rama, both were Narayana incarnate. Anasuya gave certain cosmetics and garments to Sita. She told her that these garments will never get dirty or crumpled or wrinkled. These cosmetics will make you extremely dear to your husband. Obviously, more than what she already, more than how dear she was to Sri Rama. Obviously, that did not need cosmetics. However, she just gifted Sita certain items. Sharabhanga and Sutikshna were two of the rishis who were aware that Rama was coming. They waited for him to come. If I remember correctly, Sharabhanga, after seeing Rama, after having a darshana, gave up his body in fire, and Sutikshna ascended to the heavens in a divine chariot. They were basically waiting for Rama to come so that they could leave the earth. Agastya has a very important role to play in Hinduism in general. He is said to be the one who kind of, the Vindhya mountain, he is said to have gone from the north to the south because the Vindhya mountain had grown very tall, and he commanded the Vindhya mountain that you bow down, because the Vindhya bowed down to Agastya, he being Agastya. Agastya apparently told him, you stay here till the time I go back to north, and he never went back. Agastya is extremely popular in Tamil Nadu. I think he is the first of the, or he's considered the most important of the 18 Siddhas, the enlightened beings that Tamil Nadu has. In the Ramayana, there are two very important roles that the sage Agastya plays. And an interesting aspect of Agastya and the Ramayana is that all the other rishis, in fact, before I come to Agastya, when in the forest, a lot of rishis came to Sri Rama and said, see, we are being tormented by a huge number of Rakshasas, you need to help us. There, after this also, Rama killed a lot of Asuras. That way, in multiple parts of the Ramayana, we see that Rama's path was guided by rishis. Now, coming back to Agastya, all the rishis that Rama encountered were as part of his journey. Agastya, he actually actively sought out. There are a lot of other stories, not only for Agastya, but for other rishis also. However, with regard to the Ramayana, Rama actually sought out Agastya actively. Where is Agastya's hermitage? At least two things that Agastya did. One, he gave certain weapons to Rama, which were given to him, Agastya, by Vishnu. There is a false narrative that is spun by popular media that Rama killed Ravana by hitting him with a weapon in his nabhi, in his stomach, which was adharmic. This is not true, this is false. At the correct time, when the time came, when the ultimate battle happened, Rama killed Ravana using a weapon that was given to him by Agastya. So now we can understand why Rama actively sought out Agastya in the Ramayana. Obviously, he did not come out, because nowhere in the Ramayana does Rama say that he is God. But that is a reason why he actively sought out Agastya. I think he also gave him something called Akshaya Tunira, basically what do you call, quivers which would never run out, if I remember correctly. He also gave those to Rama. A second very important place where we see Agastya in the Ramayana, towards the end, in the ultimate battle between Rama and Ravana, there was a place where Rama showed signs of getting tired, of let's say, kind of being downcast. At that point of time, Agastya was sent by the gods to tell Rama something called the Aditya Hridayam. There is a phrase in the Ramayana which says, Daivataicha samagamya drashtumabhyagaturanam avagamya abrabid ramam agastyo bhagavan ruchi. Rama, Valmiki himself says, Bhagavan Rishihi to Agastya. Daivataicha Samagamya, sent by the gods who had come to see the battle, was Agastya. He told Rama something called the Aditya Hridayam. Remember the earlier video where we said that Hinduism has something called the Saura Tantra, right? So one of the 6 ways in which to invoke or think about Parabrahma is in the form of the sun. The Aditya Hridayam talks about the sun being the supreme divine principle. And after learning this, Trirachamya Sushir Bhutva Dhanuradaya Viryavan, there is this part in the Aditya Hridayam towards the end. So after learning this from Agastya, Rama became rejuvenated, re-energized, and went on to kill Ravana with the weapon that he had taken from Agastya, which originally belonged to Vishnu. That way, Agastya plays a very important role in the Ramayana. Now, whether it is the sages here or whether it is other sages, they themselves have very important, very interesting lives. There are a lot of things that we can learn from them, that we should learn from them. I wanted to touch upon the Mahabharata and Vedavyasa also. However, given that it will become too long, I will end this particular video here. Another thought that did occur to me was that going forward, I will create a separate playlist, a sub-series called Rishis, where I will try to touch upon the lives of some of these Rishis in more detail. As always, I welcome your feedback in all ways. I've received a lot of humbling feedback, extremely grateful for that. So I will end this particular video here on this note. Thank you for watching this video. Namaste.